Ian Sherr joins us now from San Francisco. He's the editor-at-large for CNET. So, okay, Ian, this is interesting. Apple said they're going to get rid of iTunes from their new operating systems. Why is that, and what does it mean for regular users?
It's interesting. I mean, you have to think about how big iTunes is. It's probably one of the most popular pieces of software ever made. And it's what made the iPod possible. It's what brought iTunes Music and buying music and all of that stuff, right? A lot of the stuff that we now take for granted today really started there. What they've done now is that they recognize that it's become rather bloated with a lot of features. It does music, that's where it started, but then it does podcasts, it has video, it does all these things, and it's actually really complex. There's a lot of people, I have family members who, they start using it and they suddenly lost control of where their phone is in it or whatever, and they get frustrated. So Apple said, okay, what we're gonna do is do what we do on the iPad and the iPhone, where they have separate apps for music, podcasts, and movies. They say separating them out will make them a lot easier to understand, and they hope also a lot sleeker, and probably they're right.
But the iTunes gift certificates I got that were 2 for $25 each, I can still use, correct?
You do not need to worry. Your iTunes gift certificates are perfectly safe. I'm curious to see whether they rebrand iTunes away completely,
yeah.
But you know, at the moment at least, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. You know, Apple also said that their new operating system will be designed to try and protect user data. What kind of changes are they going to make?
I think one of the key changes they're going to be doing is this thing where they're doing, it's called sign in with Apple. So for now, if you get an app and you download it, oftentimes you want to sign in with Google or Facebook, right? You always have that button. And it supposedly makes things really quick. But as we've learned, especially because of the Cambridge Analytica scandal over the last year and all of these other things, we learned that when you click sign in with Facebook, a lot of your data can end up in the hands of these people when you don't want it to be. So what Apple has said, okay, we're going to make it really simple. We're going to make it so that none of this extra data gets sent to the developers. We're going to actually obscure your email if you want, so they won't even have an email to connect you to. And what they're trying to do is make it really safe and simple. It's a very strong opinion that they're taking, and they're pushing it pretty hard, but they say that this is something that people want.
Do you buy this? Do you think it really is going to work?
You know, I think that I totally believe it works. The question is whether or not everyone's going to buy into it. You know, I'm curious to see. I think a lot of developers, you know, will want to get that information about their users at some point, right? Like, they want my email. They want to market to me.
Exactly.
So I'm curious how far Apple can go with it. But I feel like they've thought through a lot of these things. You know, I spoke with Apple, and they said that they really thought through, okay, here's how we're going to handle all of these different emails that we're going to create that are one-time use emails for these companies so that they can't track you. They really wanted to make sure that they could deconstruct this tracking stuff and all of the things that end up leaking our privacy.
You know, what are some of the other features, Ian, you talk about, you know, for Apple users that they can expect with this new iOS system?
I think the biggest change is going to be this thing called dark mode, which, you know, it may seem silly. They're literally just taking all the whites and making them darker. But this is actually something that's become a cause du jour in the tech world, partially because, you know, we all end up on our beds with the screen is in our faces, and the light is really bright, and maybe our spouse next to us is very angry because they can't sleep. And one of the things that's really happened is that we started becoming aware of what this bright light can do to us. So these dark mode things have become popular because they cut down on that light. Sometimes for some people they're easier to read. They definitely have a different look. So they're going to be probably one of the most popular parts of the changes.
That's so interesting to hear. You know, for the first time in actually 6 years, we know Apple has announced a new Mac computer tower. What took them so long to upgrade their most powerful product?
You know, it's really hard to tell, and I think that if you look at the criticism that they have faced for so long over how they treat their professional users, you know, they make plenty of phones, they make the iPads, people love them for that, but the really high-end computers, they've been said to be not really doing as much. And this new device, you know, they say is ridiculously powerful. They have a new screen to go with it. They say is one of the best screens on the market, of course. And, you know, I'm curious to see how that's going to change people's perceptions, but for a long time people felt like they just weren't really putting out stuff for the professional users, which is a very large part of their base.
That's such a good point. You know, what are you most excited about from the conference and what you've heard so far?
I think what really interests me is to learn more about how the iPad is changing. And part of the reason is that, they renamed the software for the iPad. It used to be called iOS, which is the same thing as the iPhone. Now it's called iPadOS. And this is just a marketing thing. But part of the reason they're doing that is that they want to really recognize that the iPad is becoming a thing to itself. A lot of people are starting to use it instead of a laptop sometimes, right? If they might reach for a laptop, they reach for the iPad because it has a keyboard and all that type of stuff. And I'm really curious to see how far they're going to push it. If you remember a while back, Steve Jobs, before he passed away, said that he believed laptops and computers were going to be like trucks. Some people would own them, but not everyone. And I think that this is where we're getting to the point where it might actually start happening.
My husband reminded me last night when my kids were asking about screen time that Tim Cook didn't allow his kids to have iPads. Is that true?
Steve Jobs did not, no. And what he did is he reduced their usage of it. And actually, he's not alone. A lot of tech company executives don't let their kids use the products very much. And I think it's telling, right? It's a really interesting trend.
So interesting, Ian. I'm so grateful that you were able to fact check my marriage and give us an updated Apple at the same time. Ian Sherr, thank you so much for joining us, Ian.
Of course.